Okay, hello everyone. If you're just joining, I'm going to give everybody a minute to join. Notifications go out and not everybody sees it at once. So I'm kind of getting set up here for a live stream to demonstrate some of the floral work that I'm doing on the right hand side of the drawing. I've got a lot of bright lights on. I might be able to turn some of them down when I draw, but it's going to be harder for me to draw if it's dark. So I'm trying to adjust the lighting so you guys can still see what I'm doing without it washing it out too much, but then I can also still see my drawing. Okay, so I've set up with my camera and I've got this other light that I'm not using right now, but I'm using this clip. So I have set it. Thanks. Happy St. Patty's Day to everyone else. I forgot it was St. Patty's Day. Well, I'm using a lot of green for St. Patty's Day, so how appropriate. I won't be able to see a lot of the chat when I actually start drawing. I won't be able to see any of it because the way I'm having to arrange this is my chair is going to go right here. I'm still recording on my camera right here. I have to record because I need to see everything that I've done and I can go back and make a time-lapse video later. So I've got my camera rolling with record on. I have this clip set up so I can clip my iPhone into it when I'm ready to start actually demonstrating the drawing. And right now I'm just holding it. So, oops, I'm trying not to get my finger in front of the camera. So it's going to be kind of awkward and I'm going to try to do it. I don't have an assistant. In the future, I'm hoping to have an assistant. The subject of this drawing is actually working. So she's not able to, she has a job, so she's not able to help me right now. So anyway, I've got a couple of lights going because even though it's daylight, it's bright outside, I like to keep the consistent lighting. So I have my light on. And I have this bright light on and kind of deflecting the light so that it's not directly at it, primarily so you can see more what I'm doing. It's going to look very washed out probably when I clip this on and start focusing on this area here that I plan to show you how I start drawing. There's not really a line drawing. I've kind of sort of sketched in a couple of ideas of where I want flowers. It doesn't really match my reference photo, but it's kind of where I want them. So I'm going to just kind of show you how I start doing it. It's not pretty to start with. It starts out pretty and it looks kind of like child's play, but when you step back and look at it like this, you'll see that it looks a lot better. And it's pretty bright and washed out from the lights. So the natural lighting in the daylight's so much better. So I hope that some of you at least will get an opportunity to see this in exhibit one day because it's a huge difference than it is just looking at it straight up under all these bright lights. Floki and Olive will not be appearing today in our episode, except for you will hear them scream in the background every now and then. They just had a bath. They're all wet and they're noisy, very vocal today. So I drug them in front of the window in the living room in their cages so they're looking outside at the dog. So they're not going to be in this episode, only my artwork. So I'm going to clip it on. I have to be very careful here to clip my phone on. Let's hope I don't drop you. Okay, so I'm going to clip it onto the area I'm going to try to draw here. And let's see if I can roll my chair up to it. I've got some pre-sharpened pencils, so I don't have to sharpen them a whole lot while I'm drawing. Oops, I'm going to try not to shake the camera. It's kind of an awkward setup, I know, but this is what you do when you don't have assistants to help you hold the camera. So that means if you guys chat or ask me questions, I'll have to respond to them either on my Facebook page or probably if it gives me an opportunity, I will respond to them, or at least if nothing else in the notes section of this video on YouTube. So either just watch and then go to my Facebook page. I am doing a episode kind of post there that's called Ask Me Anything. So if you see something I'm doing, you need to ask questions, go to my Facebook page and post on that Ask Me Anything thread. And then you can ask the questions there and I'll answer it to the best of my ability. well, I can answer everything. It might not be the answer you're looking for, but I can answer anything. So I'm gonna start with just kind of an idea of what I do. My reference photo is way over to the left, and if you saw whenever I first started up this live stream, I had my iPad attached to a board over to the left, and that's where my reference photo is. I really don't need it super close because I'm kind of sort of making some of this up, less actually doing it exact. I'm not really doing it exactly like I see it. And even in some of these areas here, it's not quite finished. So once I'm completely done, I need to go back over the whole thing and fill in all these little areas. And I think I'm getting out of my YouTube zone, so I'm not going to go up here in the areas, but there's some areas up here that still need some shading and some coloring and some depth added. So in the meantime, I kind of get ahead of myself, and I want to get something on the paper. And then when it's all done, I'll probably end up with another couple of hours of just going back and fine-tuning everything, adding depth, connecting petals and leaves, and making it a little bit better. So like some things, like every time I pick up a pencil, I go back in and I'm like, oh, I got to fix this little tiny detail area. So you'll see me kind of going back over that. And that's when you see the actual speed time-lapse drawing, you'll see me finish the whole piece, and then there'll be another probably minute of me just going over the whole thing with pencils. So to start with, since I don't really have a real accurate line drawing, a lot of you who are starting out with pencils or learning, you may actually do like a light box or a projector and get a full sketch of all the details of where everything's going to go. But once I made the points of where her eyes and her mouth and her face was going to be, and the elbow and things like that, little marks, I went back in with a pencil, a light gray pencil, and just kind of sketched some flowers. And my sketches doesn't mean anything because I change it as I go. So for instance, I kind of know I want a flower right about right here. I had to change the position of some of the flowers because they weren't ideal for the layout. I wanted the composition, maybe there needed to be more red or less white or whatever. So I know I want a flower about right here. So this first setup of going through this floral, this first, it's kind of like a rough sketch with colored pencils. So what I'm going to do is start off with just like, I know I want the flower here. So I'm going to use a permanent carmine, and I'm just going to kind of sketch in the flower that I want. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to kind of sketch from looking at my reference photo, approximately size. And that's mostly what I'm keeping in my iPad to scale. So I can kind of know how big I want these individual flowers. But a flower is very forgiving. So if it's not identical to my original reference, then it doesn't matter because it's a flower. I mean, and nobody's going to go identify that flower later and say, well, you messed up on this flower. So I'm not really worried about it. And I'm looking pretty far across to my left to actually be able to draw this flower. See, it doesn't matter if you kind of mess it up or go a little bit out of the lines or where you want to go. Just kind of I'm just kind of sketching it with this red pencil and deciding kind of where I want it to be. So it's not science or anything, it's just an idea of where it's going to be. And that helps me so that when I go back to draw, I have already got the layout of kind of what's going to go where. And then I have the leaves around it. I know they're a certain shape. So I go from one type of shape and style of greenery to another depending on the type of flower that's around it. And I want to make sure it's at least accurate enough to have the right kind of leaves. So I'm going to take right now I'm using the chromium green opaque polychromos pencil. All of these are polychromos pencils. And I'm just going to kind of lightly sketch in a couple of leaves where I want them. And they aren't necessarily exactly where they are in the reference photo, and they're not necessarily the right color right now. I just want to kind of lay out where they're going to go, like the direction that the leaves go, and not really worry too much about what color they are. This flower's not in my reference photo, just kind of threw it in there. So it's kind of in the way of where I want a leaf, but that's okay. They're long, thin green leaves. And then there's never like just leaves. Sometimes there's some messed up stuff in there. So there's like little stems that kind of come across in other areas. kind of across the leaves so that it looks more accurate. And I'm not looking at my reference photo for accuracy as far as like, oh, this needs to look exactly like this. It's more like, find me a shape of a leaf, and I like that shape. So I'll just kind of lay it in here like that, and maybe a couple of little ones. And there's these things that look like little buds that kind of go out like this, and they have like a little thing on them. They go out. So I'm just kind of sketching the shapes, the actual shapes that I see. Whether or not they're in the right location doesn't matter. Nobody's really going to know what location they were in the reference photo. No one's going to examine it. And I'm not trying to do photorealistic. I'm trying to get the right kind of flowers in the right places. So this is just kind of a real rough sketch. So I'm kind of drawing it as I go. I know I like this one leaf that kind of comes out from the flower and goes down here. So I'm going to get that in there. And then there's a couple of little, I don't even know what you call these. They're little, they look like little pieces of blades of grass, or like starter areas where maybe a flower is going to bloom out of. And so I'm trying to capture those at the end of like little stems that kind of randomly go through here. And I don't have a whole lot of time today. Obviously, I'm not going to sit here and draw for hours. So I'm going to show you how I sketch them in, and how I start with a really rough, kind of ugly layout, and then how I go back in and smooth it. So what I'll probably do is finish like this little area and just not necessarily finish. I won't connect it all. But you can kind of see how up here, this is really kind of ugly. This was just a rough layout. And I'm going to show you how I do this, how I go from the more photorealistic piece up here that's kind of done, probably still not done. I say that. I've got to go back over, fill in with more dark colors, create the depth a little bit better. It's not really done until I say it's done, but you'll see me continuing to go back up into the grass. If you ever watch me draw, I'm like, you know, I don't like this area. It needs to be, and it's hard to stop. So probably by the time it's all said and done, I'll go back over it all again. But right now I just kind of sketched in something. So that's kind of how you see how I lay it out. Thank you. Hey, I see some of the chat. Yeah, it is kind of cool that you can just do this with just pencil alone. I'm not using solvents. I'm not using anything else. I see there's some white flowers up here, and they're kind of buried in the background here. So I kind of want to like put a petal. Sorry if you hear my birds in there. They're just kind of vocal today, and they really want to be in here with me, but I can't concentrate on talking to you guys and do this because they want my full attention. So that's kind of part of a leaf. I'm just going to kind of hide a couple petals in there. And this is not really important. I don't need to have all this stuff sketched in. It just gives me kind of an idea. Sometimes I just don't do anything there because I know I'm going to be able to figure it out as I go along. Here I probably need a little bit more stem, you know, maybe some kind of little thing happening. There's just a lot of greenery in my reference photo between this flower and the next flower, which is somewhere over here. It's going to be a purple flower that's similar to one of these. But this one's kind of a reddish color flower. So I'm going to go back to this red flower and show you the next step of what I got to this. It's going to kind of blow your mind because it's not going to look very professional. It's just how I do it. I just start sketching it in because I need to get the idea on the paper. And I'm using, let's see, quite a few different shades of red to get this. I've got dark red, I've got permanent carmine, I even have some madder, and I have some cadmium red, middle cadmium red, and I have scarlet red. So I have quite a few different colors that I'm going to do to create this one flower. I'm even going to bring in some, let's see, I'm going to pull out this pencil. I'm going to use some pink madder lake. So I'm going to have that as well. And I use a piece of glassine paper under my hand. So I'm always going to cover the paper with my glassine. I don't want to put my hand directly on the paper because my oils of my skin, and you can see I'm sorry, my hands are ugly. I just have so much black pencil and pigment on my hand from drawing for 3-4 days straight. So they don't look good, so don't look at my hands. But anyway, when I start to draw, I'm just going to kind of I'm looking at the values, and so I'm taking one of the darker pencils, and this is the middle cadmium red, and I'm just laying it in there kind of how I where I want the dark colors to be, or the dark values. And I'm just kind of scribbling. I'm not following, like when you're doing skin tones, it's so different. I mean, I've got to make sure every direction of my pencil is going accurately, and it's laid on very carefully. But when I'm doing this, it's just like, you know, I just want to lay out where the dark is going to be and where the light is going to be. So I'm just kind of getting my values laid out. There's this little squiggly thing that's actually white. I want to make sure and leave some of those. So I hope you can see this. If you can't see this really well, know that whenever it's done, I noticed that YouTube uploads it as HD quality. So it does start out kind of, I think it's a little blurry. But once you watch it after the uploaded part, you're going to see it a little bit better. You can make sure you're watching it in HD at that point. Okay, so that's kind of pretty much all I need to do with the dark pencil. Lay a little bit of the dark color. Then I'm going to look at my pencils and kind of go to a shade lighter. I think I'll go with this one. It's got a little bit of a pink in it. It is madder, and it's very, it's less red, a little bit more vibrant pink in it, almost a fuchsia. So I'm just kind of putting that next to the darkest colors, really light touch. Just kind of laying it out. I need a base, and it doesn't really matter which direction I go because I'm going very light, and this is not the final color it's going to be, and this is definitely not the final layer, but I'm just kind of filling it in a little bit. Okay, and then even before I really finish this flower, now I've switched to the scarlet red, deep scarlet red, and I'm kind of just putting some deep scarlet red in there on top of some of the darker reds that I've made too, just keeping the shape of the flower accurate and the values and accurate, because I want to make sure I have the darks and the lights where they go. If that's really the most important part of drawing to make it look realistic and creating that depth, is to be able to get the sketch laid out with the right values. I can kind of go around that again just to keep my line. There's like a dark thing there. So I'm just going to kind of finish that little flower off. And obviously not finish the flower, but I'm kind of getting it laid out. So now I kind of know where my flower is going to be. And it's starting to look a little bit more like a flower. And I'll use more of these reds to finish that flower. But before I even do that, I jump to my greens. Greens are a little bit less important in some sense because a lot of them get mixed together to make one color of green, or a color of green that doesn't exist. So I've got a couple of extra pencils so I don't have to keep sharpening them, like there's two of the same. And then there's, I've got hunter green, I have emerald green, I have permanent green olive, and I have green opaque, and then chromium green opaque. And then I have, this is May green, and this is green yellowish, earth green yellowish. Okay, so I have extras so I don't have to keep sharpening them because it's really loud, and it's louder than my birds. So I'll start with like a lighter one or a middle color, which is like this is the earth green yellowish, and I'll just kind of start sketching it in the background where the light things that I see are going to be. This is kind of a lighter green here. And I can press a little harder if I want to make sure and know that that value changes, that it's light and then it has dark. And I'm just going to kind of sketch them in. There's some little light green areas that kind of come off of the stems, so I want to put those in, and they're going to be kind of showing up through the dark background. So just kind of laying them in there like that. And it's going to get kind of even crazier because in a minute it almost is going to look like I'm scribbling to get this floral print down. And this is light, light, and light. And then I'm not really looking a whole lot at my reference because I don't really need to. Just kind of know what's going to look good. Okay, then I'm going to take some of my dark green, and I'm going to use the hunter green right now. And I'm going to go literally in here and just kind of fill it all in. And when I talked to you about scribbling and not looking very professional, I was meaning it. This part of it is just a guide for when I go back in and make the detail. So I'm just kind of filling it in, the little open areas. Like this. Sorry, Floki, sorry, Olive, you can't join the party. They're noisy now, but they're really quiet whenever I'm drawing usually, and they're very happy to be on their play gym and just play, and they're nice, but as soon as I start talking like this, they think I'm talking to them, and they're like, hey, come get me. So they'll start freaking out. If they see me get my phone out to record, they really want to be a part of it. They'll like fly to my phone and land on it, so can't really do a live stream with them in here unless somebody's in here helping me, and I don't have an assistant today. So this is just kind of all the same color green. I'm not going to make it all the same color. I'm mixing a lot of greens together. Now you're going to see me pull the green olive out. I'm going to put a little bit more in there. Put some green olive in here. Now a lot of this green is going to be covered by black because I'm doing so much dark in the background. I really want it to be a nice, dark, rich color in the background back there. So that's going to add to the depth and the photorealism. Whenever you step back away from the drawing, you're going to see that it looks real, and it looks like the flowers are kind of coming up out of the dark underneath them. So that's part of the reason why you see me use so much black. So, but the black rarely goes directly on the white paper. Sometimes it does because I'm being, this is a big piece, and I'm not being super slow. I mean, I kind of draw fast, not because I'm trying to rush it, but it's just what I do. I mean, I don't know. I think I'm probably faster than a lot of people. I always overestimate how much time I'm going to spend on my pieces. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to take, 200 hours, and when it's all said and done, maybe it was only 100 or 150, or I usually overestimate. Okay, so you can see what I'm talking about, how it gets really ugly. It's not very attractive at this point. It looks like a little kid kind of sketched a couple of flowers, and I'm just making stuff up over here. I want some, and sometimes I make it up and then I don't like it and I just cover it anyway. But I want to kind of have the flowers going this direction, or the grass, the leaves, whatever it is. I'm not big on florals. I really do not like drawing greenery. I don't like landscapes or greenery or drawing flowers. So why did I pick this piece? Because it's really pretty, and I wanted it to be, I wanted to do it, but even though it's not my thing. So now I'm using some May green, and I'm just going to kind of go in, fix this little stem area that I don't want to lose. Okay, now I'm just going to take this out of my pencil and just kind of make sure some green is on all of this. And just kind of fill that in. It makes it easier when I go back to fill it in with the black, if there's some green in there. Okay, so this is what I was talking about, not looking really awesome. And it's kind of hard to believe that that's going to turn out really nice. But it's going to look really good when I'm finally done with it. So then I'll go back in with I'm going to use the Chromium Green Opaque, because it's a really dark green, and there's a lot of like olive colors in this piece. And I'm just going to kind of go in and press a little harder. And I'm doing my ovals from my upper right to my lower left, because I'm starting to get onto the upper layers, and I want my layers to be going the right direction. I'm just going to kind of fill in some of that with dark. This kind of helps me decide where everything's going to be. Like, I'm rotating my pencil to keep it on the sharp side, and I can kind of know, like, okay, well, this is where that's going to be. This is going to be dark around here. Definitely going to be dark around here and here. I'm going to go over green before I go in with black and really fill that in. And of course, I'll finish the flower before I really go in on the blacks. But you can start to see that I'm kind of really pressing. I can press a little harder here because I'm not going to do a ton of layering on these flowers. I don't need to, because they're going to look good by the time I build up 4 layers max. So this is just to get me some of that depth in there, make sure I'm capturing that depth. And so when I go back and fill it in with black, I can leave some dark areas green and fade the black into the green. So that's why I'm doing the floral like this, okay? if that makes sense. You'll see it in a minute. I'll try to do that. So that's kind of pretty. It's got a nice little pattern. I've got some of these little green leaf things going on up here. So I want to keep some of those little shapes so that they kind of blend in with the last flower type. And then just kind of darken it out. That darker now. If I want that a little bit lighter in here. And I want to be sure and keep my value going. This is a real sketchy motion, real quick. It's the underneath layers. It's not going to be that critical. Got my tape here to make sure I can stay on the inside of my drawing. I don't waste any of my pencil strokes. Just keep drawing in here. Now some of my paper, I scratched it whenever I was moving it from one place to another. It's not a big deal. I can go back in and just fill those little scratches with pencil. And by the time it's all done and the final piece is put on, the final layers, you won't notice that at all. And then I just kind of green again. We'll get more. That's going to be a flower. It almost looks like a butterfly, but it's going to be a flower. And it's going to be faded into the background. It's not going to be real bright white like these flowers up there are. It's going to be more of a, like it's under all the foliage. Okay, so I'm kind of just filling in. You can already see I'm starting to get more value and depth laid in. So you can kind of, my colors might not be all accurate yet, but it's starting to look floral. Okay, so then after I've done that, I'm ready to work on my flower. So I'm going to get my pinks and reds again. And for the sake of time, I'm not going to tell you every time I switch a color. I'm just going to start coloring and looking at my reference photo. And I'm using my little oval strokes to fill in. And even though I'm using a lighter red, as I go over the darker areas, it's going to build up and look darker there because there's dark color underneath it. So I'm using a light red there. And I'll need to bring some pink in there. And those birds are being naughty. They're like, I've been looking at the dogs and out the windows and I'm bored. Please bring me in to your room, but I'm not going to. Just being a mean bird mama right now. Those birds are spoiled rotten. They get everything they want. They just had a big bowl of vegetables and they threw it all over my art room wall. So I had to clean it all off and make them take a bath. And now they're in there in the other area mad at me because I won't let them back in here. Okay, so now I'm using some pink and just adding some pink to the edges. I'll just keep layering this up until it looks right. My table is shaking a little because it's not up against a wall like it used to be. Okay, so there's some really definite white little things in the middle of this flower, and I don't want to lose those. I will color over them with white, but I don't want to lose them right now. Okay, so I'm just going to keep building this up until it's super smooth and nice. By the way, working under all these hot lights is very hot. So I don't know what I'm going to do in the summertime. And my birds hate the ceiling fan. I have it turned off right now. They're terrified of the ceiling fan. So I'm going to have to figure that one out. They're going to have to get used to it. I'll put them in the cage when the ceiling fan's on so they don't like fly up into it, which would be very bad for them. But in the meantime, they just don't like it on. They're like scream at me when I turn it on. So I'll probably put my headphones on and let them scream away all they want because the fan is going to have to come on in the summer. I can't work under these hot lights without some kind of air to flow. So right now it's very, very hot. I'm just kind of switching out some of the color for that variation. And I'll even bring back a little bit of lighter color to kind of give that little bit of pop. And I'm just filling it in. Now this flower is not going to start looking that great until I start adding the darker values. But first, I think I want a little bit of light magenta because I'm really starting to see a little purpley tone in my reference photo. So I'm kind of going over that with a little bit of purpley color, light magenta. And then as I put the light magenta in, what normally happens is then the light magenta starts making it look too purple. So I'm going to balance that out. Let's see. I feel like I need a little bit. I'm gonna actually use a little bit of dark flesh in there. Flesh colors are not always for flesh. Sometimes they're for flowers. It's just called dark flesh. There's really not anyone's face that I've ever created with just dark flesh. I don't know why the color is called dark flesh. Skin tone and pencils and skin tones and paints really kind of make me laugh, because if you buy it, it'll say light flesh tone, and if you tried to like paint somebody's face with that color, it would be hideous. So you really have to like mix it up a lot. It's not really the color that it says it is. It's not light flesh. Okay, I'm gonna sharpen my white. Sorry, that's loud. I gotta get my sharp white. So I'm gonna take my white now, and I'm going to kind of go back over a little area here, just kind of desaturate that tip of the flower just a little bit. Kind of desaturate it and put some white in that middle before I go back over it to add the darker values. Okay, now I still want a little darker red. I want like a really dark red in the middle of that, like almost a burgundy-ish. Which this is actually middle cadmium red, but I'll even go darker than this. I'll probably put a little bit of Caput Mortem violet in there for some of that deep, rich color. Okay, so I'm just kind of like trying to add the texture the way I see it. So you can see how long it takes. The first sketches and just getting stuff laid out, it doesn't take that long. But it's when you start kind of going back in and trying to do all this little detail. And to get the detail in there, it's a lot longer. They're mad. They're trying to tell you. They're trying to make up stories and say I'm not nice to them. But trust me, I'm very nice to them. You can watch Olive on her YouTube channel, which she only has 3 videos, because I'm doing too much of this right now. So I'm going to bleed some of this Caput Mortem over into the kind of edge of the flower, even though it's going to be dark behind it. I'm gonna kind of start off with this. So there's like a barrier between the black and the pinks of the flower. Okay. And then I'm gonna kind of get that, just use a little bit more reddish brown, just the Caput Mortem. And then I'm gonna take my black. I'll do more of this flower later, but this is going to be too long if I spend forever on this flower. So I'm just going to kind of jump right to the dark color. And I'm going to start putting that dark in next to the little squiggly things. I have a Tombow Mono Zero eraser. Sometimes I'll pick up a little bit too much of I'll cover up too much of the little white stuff and I'll want it back in. And let me just show you what that is. This is a Tombow Mono Zero eraser. It's a teeny tiny eraser. And I have a piece of sandpaper that I will clean it off with first, just to make sure that it's nice and clean. It doesn't pick up other colors. And it's like a mechanical pencil, so I press this button once and it comes out a little bit. And then you can get really tiny little areas with it and it'll pick up. So I can pick up a little bit more of that light area where I accidentally covered over it. And then I can go back in with my white and just kind of lay that in there better, so I don't lose it. I didn't lose the little squiggly thing. And now I'm going to use a little bit of the black, kind of add some value in here. And the depth behind the petals. I'm going to capture some of that depth. I'm actually going very light with the black. I'm not going very dark at all. And a lot of times I would not even use the black. I would use other colors, but because there's so much black in this background, which is kind of adding that wow factor next to her pale skin and her pretty white dress, so that's why I'm using so much black. So now I'm going to go with this black on top of the green, and I'm doing the ovals. I'm not pressing quite as light as I was when I started, but I'm not pressing as hard as I can either. I'm kind of in the middle there. I'm just going to go a couple layers to get it nice and dark. And when I see a stem like that, I'm going to go real light on top of it with the black, so I can kind of fade to those greens. But right up next to the flower, I want that flower to pop, so I'm going to go black. And then I'm just going to kind of lightly, and I'll fade more green back into it as well. This is a super light touch with the black. And then I'll just kind of keep that dark black going around the edge of the petal. Shaping it as I go, so I'm kind of making up this stem stuff as I go. And like right here, I'm like, I think I want that to be a leaf. So I'm going to skip over it because I'm going to make that kind of green, but it'll have some black in it, so I'll just put a little black, and then I'll fade some green into it. Here I want more black. And just sit and kind of go around it. It's going to look very washed out. For me, it's very, very saturated and dark, but under these lights, it's very, very washed out looking. Whenever I turn the lights down or not point directly at it, it looks a lot more vibrant. So just keep that in mind when you're watching. These colors are very vibrant, very colorful. It's not as washed out as it looks like on screen, probably. I can't tell exactly what you're seeing, but I will know when I watch back. So that's kind of the frustrating part of making videos, because I need the lights to draw, but at the same time, and you need the lights to see, but at the same time it looks more washed out. Okay, so my flower is starting to look like a flower, and I still have variations in color. I'm going to go back in and make it actually a little richer red. You'll see me layer more and more of the brighter pop colors just to get that in there until I'm really happy with the color. And just keep working on it until it's rich, saturated. And these top layers, I can press a little harder. I'm kind of doing more of a burnishing piece. So this whole piece of art is very burnished, as far as either burnishing it by pressing it a little bit harder on that last layer so that it's nice and smooth and rich. And then the pencil, now when I go to the greens, when I start kind of pulling in the greens around it and tying it into the rest of the area, I said I would take some of the green and fade it back to the black. And then I'll fade the black again. And then I'll bring some of these different colors and just kind of start making stuff up. Because this stuff doesn't really matter. The goal is to make it look like it's just a bunch of stems and greenery kind of coming in and out of there. And then I'll pull the black in every now and then and just kind of add some depth. So you can see it's not an awful long time to create the flowers and all the greenery. It's actually more time consuming for the skin. So I spend a lot less time on all of this greenery, and it goes by a little bit faster. Even still, it can be hours. You know, you think you're just spending a few minutes, and then you look down at your clock and you're like, oh, wow, I've been doing this for a very long time. It's time for a break or whatever. So it's easy to think it's fast, and then when you actually start really getting into the detail of all this, you can see it takes a long time. But see, I'm just kind of making this up as I go along, creating the, I'm not even looking at my reference photo right now because, you know, I want it to look a certain way. I know what I want it to look like, and I don't really need to look at the reference. The reference was more for the type of flower, the type of greenery, the type of, you know, leaves and shape, and the highlights of the colors, and where I want to go back in and add highlights. Now I can go back in and add highlights easily. For instance, if there's something in here that maybe I have too much black and I really want to add something, I can just kind of take my Tombow Mono and just kind of lift a little color, and then I can add a little green and just kind of change it up. It's very easy to manipulate once I kind of start getting it going and knowing, you know, what I want. And then I'll just start tying it all together with this different shades of green and black, and fading some of the blacks, making depth in between stems and leaves with like a green glow. So it's basically really how I do the floral. It's not real difficult. It's just slow moving and kind of time consuming. But when it's all done and you step back, the whole picture, it really does, you know, pop. But when you look at it really up close, it's not that technical. It's, to me anyway, it seems not that technical. Coming up and around the flowers to define them, and I'm adding dark around most of these flowers because even the reference photo did have a lot of dark up around the flowers. She was laying on my porch with a bunch of potted flowers actually all around her. You can't see the pots, of course, which would kind of ruin it. And I'm excited. I'm about to do another photo shoot for her because she'll be of a series of Evie. This is 17 Spring, and I'll probably be getting one called 17 Summer. I want a 17 Fall and a 17 Winter I already have planned as far as what they're going to look like. Just need to take the photos for reference photo. Anyway, so this is kind of how it goes. So that is the demonstration of how the live stream works. I mean, how the I did a live stream of how the pencils work. Sorry. Also very difficult to talk at the same time when I'm drawing. So hopefully I made sense and didn't say words that didn't make any sense. This is, you can start to see it come together whenever you step back and look at the piece as a whole. I'll move this. And you can really see that flower. Remove some of this stuff that I just created is going to look really good by the time all the greenery and stuff around it. Okay, so I've spent about 40 minutes on this live stream, way longer than I thought. So I thought I would spend about 10 minutes creating what I just did. So that's what I'm talking about. Every 10 minutes that I spend, I think, oh, this is only going to take 10 minutes, and it's 40. So sometimes I end up spending a lot more hours on a piece than I estimate. And sometimes I'm a lot faster than I think I am. So it just really depends. But this is about a 40-minute session of not even finishing, but actually getting one flower in and some of the dark and the greenery laid underneath. Okay, so I'm going to end the live stream now and let it upload. And if you want to ask questions, go to my Facebook page on the Ask Me Anything post that I put there last night, and you can ask questions about this live stream, because if you asked during the live stream, I missed it because I was too busy drawing. Okay, well, thanks for watching.